Hi everyone, welcome to Neverness to Everness, the latest gacha open world release that everyone hyped up to be the new anime GTA. Personally, I don't think it is, it's more like Yakuza, but whatever. But this is not a boss guide, this is not a gameplay showcase video, this is purely a video that satiates my curiosity, specifically with what you see on screen right now. These are the minimum and recommended specs for PC gaming and its hardware. And personally, I don't know if it's just because I'm so used to looking at 2023, 2024 spec sheets, but having an i7-10700 or a Ryzen 7 3700X, both 8-core 16-thread CPUs that are still pretty relevant in today's age when it comes to modern PC gaming, is kind of a surprise to me, because those are pretty beefy. And you only need a GTX 1660 / Radeon RX 5600 and also surprisingly an Arc A580 for the minimum graphics card requirements. So this tells me that the game is developed with upscaling in mind, considering this is a UE5 game, so you can turn on LUMEN, TSR, and frame interpolation, or frame gen really. But what also interests me is the recommended specification, because of the fact that the actual processors they recommend for the game is a huge step up. It's an Intel Core i7-12700 and a Ryzen 7 5800X, especially the 12700. That got me fucked up because I have a 13700 in this system that you can see it down here in my little MSI Afterburner thing, and like I still feel a little bit stutter going around playing this game. And the video card recommendation only states an RTX 3060, which is still a 1080p card, a Radeon RX 6700, which has, I think at this point, fallen into the 1080p high sort of graphics card, or you can upscale it with FSR 2.0 for 1440p, but you know, it's the whole thing by itself, and an Arc B580, which is also interesting. So I wanted to share my recommendations for if you have my hardware, which is an i7-13700 and an RTX 4070 Ti Super, which is more like a 3090 kind of performance rather than like a 3060 or 3070 really. But I always play my games on 1440p, so maybe this can help you sort of dial back your settings and kind of show you what to turn on and what not to, because I was super tripping because I wasn't really sure what everything did in the settings menu. But I'm going to start off with my personal recommendations for game settings and then go into showing what you can and can't use, at least personally for my system, because this game really does take a toll on your stuff if you turn on the wrong setting. So for this test though, I'm just going to be doing something pretty simple. I'm going to start in the starter area on Honkaku Street. We're going to start at the Word Timer Tower. I'm going to walk up and around, go to the witch's house because that has a lot of foliage. Then I'm going to go down to Fox Window Street and then turn it to rainy so that we have all the super awesome reflections and puddles and water physics and stuff. I'm going to drive all the way down Torchwood Avenue and then go up here to like this gazebo and then come back down and go to Davidia Avenue to go down the big street so you can see the whole like rain effect in full scale. And obviously I'm going to go fight battles as well because, like, you know, that's half the game. But I just wanted to show you kind of how the performance tanks and or just miraculously gains all its FPS back and hits the 120 frame cap limit. So first we're going to start with the personal settings that I use. I use DLAA because I feel like my 4070 Ti Super can't handle that. However, I'm not going to turn on global illumination. I'm going to turn off Lumen and just keep the reflection mode at SSR, but everything else at Ultra, because I noticed there's not really much of a difference between Ultra and High. And I'll put the sharpening at 0.5 just because that's my personal preference. And you can see here that once I exit out and I just kind of walk around, I'm still getting around a 100 FPS average really. I'll start sprinting and it zooms out a little bit. It might go down to like, I don't know, say 95 FPS, but in general, it's not bad. So as I approach more foliage, it might dip down to like the 90s, maybe 85, but it's still over 60 by a comfortable amount, and it won't dip under, so you won't feel it dip to 60. And once we swap everything, whoosh, because you go in here, the settings change. You go all the way down to 80 FPS, but then you kind of smooth out at 90 if you go into our house, and then everything seems fine interior. You have like 100 plus FPS here, and she looks fine. And pretty much you're good here, because as long as it doesn't dip under 60 FPS, I feel like it's fine for a game like this. And once you exit out of the foliage, you've got the sunlight come back. I'm going to turn it to rainy now, to just sort of get the whole aesthetic, I guess, running. Oh, come on now. Takedo, fuck off. I'm just going to wait for everything to load in. And you can see the puddles already loading in, and the splashes and splish splash and whatnot. So I'm going to call my car, and we're going to go on a little ride. And you can see that even though that I'm standing in the middle of everything, and the reflections are going haywire at the moment, full blast, I'm still around 95 to 100 FPS as if I didn't change any settings at all, which is pretty good. Alright, let's grab Mint and try not to crash into another car. Come on. And what surprises me the most is that we're still above 90 FPS for the most part, even though that we're doing a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna go down this road, load in everything, spin my camera around, and I'm still around like 80 to 90 FPS on average, which honestly is pretty impressive, especially when I'm turning on DLAA and kind of just full blasting everything, so there's no like artifacting at all. And I know there's a spot here with the gazebo. Sorry, Mint, one sec. Whoop! And just kind of splashing around the water. Do a little battle here. Ow. So I'm not going to kill them because I do need them to be alive so I can demonstrate the battles and stuff. But you can see here that like we're still averaging in the middle of foliage and battle alongside all the water and like puddle physics. We've never dipped under 70. On 1440p on max settings, that's honestly pretty good. I'm fine, don't worry. But let's go back down. Alright, so let's head toward the Golden Gate Bridge, as I like to call it. And let's just kind of let's just observe how the game looks. And you can see, like, when I'm in my reflections, like when I look backwards, the car's trunk looks really good. All the reflections and stuff and the dripping water and everything look pretty consistent. There's no artifacting and whatnot. And even like taking in the sights like this and having a bunch of particle effects and whatnot, we're hitting very good averages, around 95 to 100 FPS down here, with very little issues with frame time as well. And the reason why I also wanted to keep DLAA on is because, sorry. You can see here that the second I turn on DLSS rather than DLAA, notice the hair around my character and also like its her clothing. You can see that it's pretty smooth, like there's just a faint glow, which is what it's supposed to look like. So the second we swap over to DLSS quality, you can immediately tell there's artifacting. And it's even more obvious when you start moving around. But obviously you're not going to be staring into the hair all the time and all whatnot. But I do have a massive FPS boost though. I'm hitting 120 FPS, no issues. And the second I go back to word timer, you can see the average for my FPS went from like the mid 90s to 100, and it just pings at 120 FPS. There's no like dips down into like the sub 100s at least. And keep in mind this is rainy, So there's a bunch of extra arc particle effects and stuff. So the second I turn it back to sunny, come on, bring it up, bring it up. Up we go. We're pretty much capping out, which honestly is great to see. So if you have even like an RTX 2060, I'm pretty sure the DLSS will work fine for you in this game, which honestly, pretty good. I don't mind that at all. DLSS is a tech, in my opinion, more useful for obviously older cards and breathing more life into them, because that's kind of the purpose. So if a game doesn't support FSR or XeSS and then you're stuck with no DLSS, you know, like a GTX 1080, and it doesn't fucking run, then you're shit out of luck, right? So we enter the foraging area, or sorry, forestry area, and sure, we hit like 90 to 100, but that's what we were getting before with DLAA. So this is pretty good already. Like, you could totally just run everything ultra with no lumen and use DLSS quality, and you probably wouldn't even care for like 99.5% of things that you see in this game, which is good, quite a lot. Like, sure, like if you run around, you might see a little bit of artifacting over here, and like things look a little fuzzy, but really, who's going to be looking at that when everything else around you looks so good, right? So personally, I think anyone running 1440p, like with my sort of hardware, maybe even like a 3080, can just run this game on ultra, and you'll be totally fine as long as you don't turn on lumen. And the reason why you shouldn't turn on lumen is because it just destroys your FPS, and you don't even have to swap to TSR for that either. So I'm just going to sit here. I might even go around and explore. So let's turn on specifically, let's go to DLAA, which is what I wanted. I'm going to turn on lumen. And once you turn on lumen, look, notice the bottom here, it already tanked in the menu to mid 60s. And the second I exit and I run around, I can immediately feel an increase in latency. You can see on the bottom, it went from like 10 to like 15 to 17. And sure, it'll hit like 60 FPS sometimes, but the second that you see any action, it's pretty much fucked. And personally, I don't really notice a massive difference in visual fidelity at all. So to me, I don't think lumen really is like the play, even if you have like a 4090 or a 5090. It only gets worse when, you know, you turn on the rain and stuff. So why not? Let's do that. Let's make it rainy. And sure, you might notice a couple extra reflections, like you can notice on the back of my Esper Zero that you have a bit more of a glow to your clothing because it's wet. But personally, I mean, am I really going to care about that? Not really. I'm just going to go around and drive around. And we've dipped into the mid-50s. And at some points we even go under 50, which you can see right here, which is kind of abysmal, I'm not going to lie. And let's just give ourselves a car so we can go a little bit faster, so things kind of start really blending together. Alright, Mint, time for another drive. Alright. Get the fuck out of the way! Get the fuck out of the way! But yeah, we have hit the mid-50s, and I can feel like a latency to my inputs now on PC, which is not what you want to have in a game like this. And let's get to where we were before in regards to the water and stuff. Let's see if I can dodge something. Yeah, we're hitting mid-40s now. And this might not be the most realistic, like, area to fight enemies in, but the fact that this can dip down into the mid-40s is kind of worrying to me already, because of the fact that you just blast lumen on it. And I don't think my 4070 Ti Super is like a massive slouch or anything. The only cards that really beat it are like, you know, the 4080, 4080 Super, 4090. and 5070 Ti, I think, along with anything else above that. So personally for me, the trade-off for like just a bit more visual fidelity, like I guess the water on my car looks a little better, and that the raindrops on it do look a bit, you know, more pronounced and stuff, so that it does look more realistic. But at some point, like, are you willing to lose 30 to 40 FPS because of that? Personally, no, not for me. And I like to crank my games a lot, but this is a bit too much for me. Because I'm not some slob that needs to have everything turned on. It'd be nice if I can, but my old PC was a GT210 with an FX 4100. Like, I'm not going to be complaining about that when I've come from that, you know? So, coming from here, all this little extra bits on my clothing and all that, like, I can live without that. So I'll turn off Lumen, and it'll still look just as fine. You could turn on frame gen. You can see the frame interpolation 2x, and then turn back on Lumen, which is kind of insane that you can do this and hit 115. To me, this is kind of black magic, and I don't think there's much artifacting unless if you watch things happen. Like, you can see the hair there kind of artifact a little bit in the middle of movement, but like, again, who's really looking at that? And there's no weird glow around my my hair either. But keep in mind, I'm able to do this a bit better because I'm on a 40 series card. I can't imagine like a 20 series or 30 series card like being able to utilize this as well as the 40 series card, because I believe like that's a paywalled feature if I remember right. So I'm not going to include that as like a serious benchmark. But having the ability to do this is honestly pretty cool, because I can have Lumen enabled and basically not have any issues with input latency. Especially because I'm not hitting sub 40s like consistently before turning on frame gen. So if you want to use frame gen and you have a 40 series card like a 4070 or whatnot, then I think it's within your best interest if you want to max out every possible aspect in terms of visual fidelity in this game. Because even though it fucks with Everness Afterburner there, you can see the frame time going crazy. Let's go over to War Timer Tower again, and we're going to be staying on 1440p, and instead of turning on frame gen and all that, I'm going to keep Lumen on, but instead of using DLSS, watch this, we're going to use TSR. And TSR obliterates this game. Lumen Ultra, look how in the menu I'm already at 40. This is basically unplayable, because now you can see my frame time is at 35 and everything basically is in slow motion, because like there's a visible like detachment between me moving my mouse and how the camera pans on screen. Like, this is kind of nauseating to play at, especially when like I don't even notice much of a visual fidelity increase, like at all. And it's only made worse because I'm over here in the rain. I'm going to go into the forest, and the FPS doesn't even dip because of the fact that I'm already just maxing out what my card can do. And you can also see my frame time is now in the 40s, and I'm using 14 gigs of VRAM. So I think this is a cry for help from my system, and at this rate, like, it's not worth it. So I'm not even gonna try fighting or anything, because this is just unplayable. However, what is interesting to me is that even if you turn off TSR and you upscaling and just want to play the game on 1.6 rendering resolution, like how HSR has it, where you can do like a 2.0 render resolution, this game still, like I said, I'm gonna go with SMAA instead, because that's just standard. I'm still in the mid-20s. And the frame time is arguably worse, because I was hitting like 35 out here. I'm hitting like the 40s here. So it's not even really like a question on whether or not I should play this game natively. because you can't. At least unless if you want to go down to 1.0 and turn off anti-aliasing. Then the second you do that, you get a 70 FPS. But look how bad my game looks now. Like, there's choppy edges everywhere. And even if I turn on SMAA, because fuck TAA, like, I'm still in the mid-60s and dipping down to the 50s when the weather changes. So you are much better off using any form of upscaling in this game when you can. So again, my personal settings, DLAA, no frame gen, and 120 frame rate, and everything else cranked with no lumen. Although I'm curious, what does this look like if I turn on lumen? Oh wait, no, it just forces it on. Okay, then never mind then. Fuck that. So the visual fidelity and clarity of the models is still there without any issues with any artifacting and such, and the game still looks really good. Until you look at, you know, you see that. Yeah, a bit. But I'm not going to be caring too much about that. I'll just look elsewhere. Oh god, it's in the sky too. Oh god. But let's do some presets now. If you don't want to toggle anything around here, you don't really know what it does, and you just want to use the graphics quality, we can go balanced. So the game will still use DLAA for me, but everything will just go on medium here instead. And you can see the second I do that, let it render in a little bit. Yeah. The lighting gets all fucked up. So now you have a gigantic lens flare in the sky, essentially, rather than the individual clouds. Which still looks really good, but I feel like at this point it's kind of blinding me, because having that versus my cinematic, that's kind of the compromise that happens when you go to lower settings. Like, things would just kind of combine together to the point where it needs to be done in order to give you extra performance. And you can tell that it didn't really save me much FPS either. I turned on only balanced and it gave me like the mid hundreds, and I'm only down to like the mid 90s here. So I would rather lose like 5-10 FPS if it means that everything else looks a bit better, because I do enjoy the look of this game, because that's one of the main selling points, right? So personally, if I can max things out to like high or ultra, I feel like that's the play. My friend with the 5800X 3D and the 3080 Ti on 1080p was playing on medium, and he was scared of putting it to ultra and keeping it at 60 because he thought he couldn't go past 60, and I was like, you're dead wrong. Crank that shit, boy. And he did, and he's happy about it. So this is pretty much it in terms of like the video. I just wanted to show kind of like a quick unprofessional demonstration based on the stuff that I had or sitting around, because when it comes to the game, I would say it's optimized enough where on launch it's playable, and it's not like Wuthering Waves where on release it corrupted your fucking graphics card drivers. Like when I first installed Wuthering Waves to try it out on my old 13600K and 4070 rig, I downloaded that shit and bam, my graphics card literally just uninstalled its drivers. I don't know how the hell that happened. Like, and then I couldn't mess with the NVIDIA app either, although maybe it was the fault of the NVIDIA app really, because that thing's basically Trojanware. But I couldn't get that thing to work. The second I finished any Wuthering Waves gaming session, I had to reinstall my drivers, because either my recordings would corrupt or everything would have a massive stutter no matter which game I played. It was crazy work. So as long as my expectation, the bar is in hell right now. Wuthering Waves really fucked that shit up on launch. So the fact that the game launched in this state where I only have to worry about a tiny little bit of micro stutter and having to use upscaling, and I can use like the good anti-aliasing upscaling rather than like TAA, honestly, not too bad. So hey, if you're enjoying this game, let me know what you're using, because I don't have any budget hardware in the house. Well, I kind of do, but I can't really install the game on it. I have a Ryzen 5 3600X and a 1660 Ti system. that someone else is using, but that's my mom's PC. I don't really know if I should install NTE on that. But my other PC that I have for backup purposes is rocking a Ryzen 7 7700 non-X and a 4060 Ti 16 gig. And I feel like that isn't enough of a comparison for me to like make two separate videos and stuff, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. So yeah, happy NTE release, and enjoy dating your waifus. Ooh, wow, that was a pretty sick transition. All right, GG's.
至此，定胜负吧！我来了呀，可可！注意，别眨眼呢！别小看我，安全同银河一起留着。登台时间到，
一定不负阴指剑月，万象成绩。谁手没有退步？
出勤出勤！公务征用，请您配合。
不借，就算你再怎么砸，我也不借。
合适的角度。像变成了鸟儿一样。
是起风了。
风向正好。合适的角度。接招！方向正好。在这儿呢。
还好没有来迟。
换我来吧。很硬。在这儿呢。好好收起来吧。